Hi, everybody. I just want to begin today by doing the reading from the language of letting go. And I just picked one of my favorite readings because I actually needed it today. I went back to it to read it. One of my favorite prayers. This prayer, it actually comes from the big book of AA. Thank you for keeping me straight yesterday. Please help me stay straight today. For the next 24 hours, I pray for knowledge of your will for me only and the power to carry that through. Please free my thinking of self-will, self-seeking, dishonesty, and wrong motives. Send me the right thought, word, or action. Show me what my next step should be. In times of doubt and indecision, please send your inspiration and your guidance. I ask you might help me work through all my problems to your glory and honor. This prayer is a recovery prayer. It can take us through any situation. In the days ahead, we'll work on this prayer. Today, I will trust that God will do for me what I cannot do for myself. I will do my part, working the steps and letting God do the rest. Whenever I have kind of a bad time in my life or going through some changes, I love that prayer. That prayer, I just love sharing it. I want to continue our series on codependency, and I'm going to be working on the concept of the roles of codependency today. And it's interesting, traditionally when I do this talk, I normally talk about what I call the 6 basic roles of codependency. But with your permission, I'm going to extend that today and talk primarily about what I call the 14 basic roles of codependency. In reality, I probably could talk about 150 basic roles of codependency. But the bottom line is, I want to emphasize something that I love doing, because one of the things I've realized in my life, so many of us don't realize it, but really in reality, we've been programmed to play certain roles. And as I mentioned, constantly going back to our history and our childhood, those roles are kind of developed in us, and then literally we kind of play them out. Good example of this, when I was a young child, I was 14 years old, and even before that, my mom kind of prepared me for a role she wanted me to play. So basically, my mother used to get me up at 5:30 every morning, and I used to go with her to church to serve the early mass, 7 days a week. That was our ritual and our routine. So as a kid, I had wonderful nicknames like Church Mouse, Mama's Boy, Mama's Little Baby. You know, I was a big hit in the neighborhood, what can I tell you? But the bottom line was, my mother was preparing me. When I was 14, she put me in the seminary. I never truly understood this until years later, when I got involved in recovery and got involved in therapy and did a lot of my work that I really began to look at. I look back at my mom. My mom basically was born way back in 1904. Her mother died when she was 2 years old. Her father took her and placed her into an orphanage, St. Vincent's in Philadelphia. And he left her and her sister there for 5 years until he found a new wife, then went back and picked her up. Now, she got abandoned by her mother, death, abandoned by her father, orphanage. Then she had to basically get picked up and put into a strange family, and she was always the stepdaughter down at the bottom. Putting me in the seminary, to get back to Italian culture, I then became the family priest. And if you become a family priest in the Italian family, you raise the family to a higher level, to a higher prestige. So not that my mother really was planning this, but basically I think that roles bring us in this direction. So in my ordination, my mother went from being a stepchild to being the number 1 child at the top of the pile, because her son became the priest. And even then, I did every wedding, every funeral, every activity, I constantly was connected with the family. When I left the priesthood, of course, I went from the top, somewhere down the bottom. I went down pretty far. What can I tell you? I worked my way back up again. But the bottom line was, it's interesting how people, because of situations in their life and because of things that happen to them, actually are programmed to certain roles so they can then be somebody, or so they think they're somebody. So I want to talk about codependency. And just for people that are new, let me define it again quickly. Codependency is any person, place, or thing that I've built a dependency on. It means I cannot function without it. That makes my life unmanageable or makes my life crazy. That could be a person, that could be a family member, that could be a situation, that could be a lot of things. And so the dependency is the key. So as a result, then we have to learn that many of us going through role playing in our life picked up traits and picked up characteristics. So tonight I want to do something different. Pat wanted me to do something different, so I want to do something different tonight. Okay, Pat? Hope you don't mind. Kathy wanted it too. But the bottom line is, when I was running my groups, my women's groups and my men's groups for codependency, I used to always do something somewhere around the third or fourth group. I would actually give out to each person in the group a role for them to play. And I gave them different roles. Then they would have to take that role, dress in the costume of that role, and then come to group dressed as that person. And then we had a lot of fun with that. It's kind of interesting. But I always liked codependents because you know what? As soon as I gave them a particular role, they immediately began to analyze me and analyze why I gave them the role. Right, Howie? They analyzed it and made themselves half crazy and made me half crazy. And I kept telling them, don't analyze it. Don't worry about it. They did. Why? Because that's what we do. It's a big part of our makeup. And so actually what happened then, when we had the group, they came in their costumes. They all looked good. They were great. They couldn't wait for me to tell them why I picked that role for them. I had to break the news to them. I couldn't help it. There's 14 different roles that codependents play. I put their names in a hat and I pulled them out. They got the role I pulled out of the hat. They didn't like that too much because I explained something to them. Of these 14 different roles, every one of them would fit every codependent I met on the face of this earth because they fit me and they'll fit many of you. Now, tonight, I want to go through those roles and give you an idea what they're really all about. And we're working kind of feverishly with our website, and eventually, with the grace of God and a few other odds and ends, we'll be able to get these roles onto Vince's Corner in the alternative readings and stuff that I have. So look for them in a day or so once we get everything back to normal. Okay? So, because I love driving Miriam crazy, so it's a lot of fun that way. So anyway, I want to share some of the roles with you. The first one I want to talk about, my favorite roles, the role of the clown. Now, codependents really do play this role dramatically. It's almost like something about a clown. A clown plays to the audience, which means the clown changes their personality based on who they're with. So this is being myself. I know for years I had my family role, my family face. I had my church face. I had my parish face. I had all kinds of faces, my God in heaven. And sometimes I confused them and got them mixed up. But again, it's like I got to please everybody and make everybody happy. There's that people-pleasing thing that goes along with that. And clowns play to the audience. You want a sad one? I'll give you a sad face, big face. It's a role, like a jester playing. And so basically, many of us fall into that category. Other roles that many of us fall into, I'm going to group some of them together because I can't go through all 14 tonight. But the ones I group together are the hit lady or the hit man for the mob. And the other one I have is the pimp or the prostitute. And then the third one is I have the horror person. Now, all these things fit. Why? Well, basically, when we talk about the hit lady or the mob, hit man or hit lady of the mob, we talk about the concept is that everything is business, no feelings. I just take care of business. Almost like I have to shut myself completely off, freeze myself down. And many of us function that way. And yet I'll do what I have to do, even though what I'm doing is distasteful. It's a functioning role. And so I do it, even though the inside of me might even cringe while I do it, but I do it because what do? I've learned how to freeze my feelings, how to shut them off. Same with the pimp or the prostitute. Basically, it's all business. It's all external, nothing internal, nothing close, no intimacy, no sharing. And the horror person, the punk rocker, the horror person, and basically, I want to keep people away from me. So I portray myself as something horrible, something terrible. You don't want to get too close. Try to scare people away. Why? Fear of intimacy, fear of getting too close, fear of being revealed, fear of actually getting to know who I really am, and fear, guilt, worry. All those things play big roles. And these are just ways in which we function in these roles. And many of us have a tendency to prostitute ourselves because we're not really being ourselves. I can share something real quick about that. As most of you know, as part of my journey, when I was 32 years old and I was in the priesthood, I had a nervous breakdown. I ended up in a psychiatric hospital. And while I was in the hospital, a doctor came up to me and he said, I happened to be a priest at the time. And he said, Father, you're spiritually dead. I couldn't understand what he was talking about. How can I be spiritually dead and be a priest? He says, you don't get it. Inside, there is no you. You have no idea who you are. You're literally playing a role. You're functioning, don't get me wrong. You're probably functioning very well. But as long as you can function externally, nobody has to get to know you internally. No one's got to get too close to you. So really, in reality, he said, you're actually performing on stage. Of course, I got mad at him. I don't like what he said. I found out later on in my life, every time I don't like what people said, is usually what I needed to do. You know how that works. But the bottom line is, it's just interesting how we get caught up in this because it's almost like I got so caught up playing this role, I literally lost myself. And many of us get into that category. I told the story many times, but when I studied speech and drama at Catholic University for 2 years, one of the things that was interesting, we actually had to do this. I was in a lot of plays. One of the plays I was in was a famous play called Stalag 17. You have to be a little bit bald on the head to remember that one. But anyway, your other half remembers that. Don't worry about it. Stalag 17. But Stalag 17, basically, I had to play the role of animal. He was the gruffy, rough-looking guy, sloppy, all that kind of stuff. So part of our classroom assignment was, for 2 weeks before the play, I had to live that role, sleep that role, be animal in everything that I did. Then for 4 weeks, we put the play on. So I'm literally playing the role of animal for 6 weeks. At the end of the play, We got graded. And then he said, you don't have to play the role anymore. Can I tell you the secret? I had a hard time stop playing it. I liked it. I got used to it. Less than 6 weeks. Many of us were programmed into roles in growing up in different situations in our life, programmed these roles for years and years and years. I was programmed into my addiction. My addiction was normal to me because I was taught it way back in my family systems. My addictive personality, all these things are just roles I play. They're part of it. The bottom line is that my spirit, the real me, has to be discovered. And that's the hard part. They're truly getting in touch with that real spirit, that energy that's deep down inside of you. Some of the other roles are the boxer, the fighter, and many of us can relate to that one. It's almost like we're in there fighting no matter what. We get beat up, we get knocked around, we go back for more, we go back for more. This time it'll be different. Here's that Charlie Brown syndrome again. It's going to be different this time, and it's not different this time. We see this a lot of times in people that get into situations where literally people are using them, taking advantage of them, beating them up. And they just, no, get another shot and see what happens here. And I go back for more. Instead of getting out of the kitchen and moving on. But again, another role that we play. It's just interesting you get into these roles. The other one I love talking about is the toy. What are toys? They're things we play with. And we get tired of them. When they're new, they're a lot of fun, right? But then we get tired of them. Remember Woody in Toy Story and Buzz Lightyear? When a new guy came along, we don't need Woody anymore. Gets thrown in the toolbox. Did you ever feel that in your life? Like you were here, people were connected to you, they were using you. But then basically, as soon as the new thing came along, it's like, goodbye, you're out here again. And a lot of resentment builds up over that and stuff to that effect. And yet so many times, we feel rejection, we feel abandonment, all these types of things come into play. You're not a toy, you're a person. And yet, you know what? We go back to that concept again, where we allow people to play with our feelings, to play with the things inside of us. We do it a lot in relationships a lot of times. It's amazing. The other role that goes along with that, and one I love talking about, is the Cinderella role. Well, that's a real one. You know, I'm looking for magic. I want the magic formula, the magic way. I'm looking for that magic thing to come along and make everything wonderful and everything great. I call it the Cinderella Disneyland role. It's totally amazing. You come right down to it. We play it though. How many people are always constantly searching for the perfect program, the perfect workshop, the perfect book, the perfect this? Does it sound like codependents talking? You know, I tell you a couple of quick stories. I had a lady come up to me after a lecture one night, quite a while ago. And she said, Vince, I got to tell you something. I said, what? I finally found the perfect program to work on my issues. I said, okay. I'm going to go to this place for 7 days. They're going to do intensive therapy on me. They're going to work me through all my issues. Finally, I found the place. So I said to her, I said, do me a favor, how much does this place cost? She said, $1,800. I said, come here. Tell you what, take the $1,800 and go on a cruise. Because there is no magic place. I didn't mean to bust her bubble. But again, we keep looking for something out there that's going to make me wonderful. We do it in relationships. I'm looking for Mr. Wonderful, Mr. Fantastic. I'm looking for the Lady Godiva, the most magical lady in the world, you know. And guess what, gang? Nothing out there but a bunch of old, good old-fashioned human beings with all of our dysfunctionalities and stuff to that effect, and our joys and celebrations, and all our changes, ups and downs. And isn't that wonderful? It's called life. And yet, so many of us are looking for the magical pill, the magical situation. When they're going to invent the pill that will cure addiction, we got plenty of pills, but not pills. The programs, things we can do, work with, right, sir? So no pill. But yet we search for that magical thing all the time. It's totally amazing. And yet it's scary. The other one I love, I've got to tell this story. I can't help it. I know Leslie's getting upset, so I better tell this story. A lady came up to me one time and she said, Vince, give me a list of all the books on codependency that I can buy so I can bring them to my therapist so she can read them and get educated about codependency so then she can work with me on my codependency issues. We are the only people on the face of the earth, codependents, that actually train our own therapists. They don't have to go to school. They got us. We actually train our own therapist. I said, can't you just find the therapist that works with codependency? Oh, I can't leave her. I've been going to her for 7 years. It's almost like you feel like you're getting a divorce or something. I said, come on. And yet that's the crazy stuff that we do. And one thing we love to do, we love to buy books and read books and figure this whole thing out before I go to bed tonight. We're relentless. It's amazing. And yet I can laugh about it today because I'm talking about me. I did a lot of this crap. I really did. I did it to myself because I really basically was searching and searching and searching instead of, like my therapist said this so many times to me, will you please stop searching and go home and look in the mirror? Look at yourself. Work on yourself. Oh, no. I had my periods. I was going to save the world, fix everybody. I was going to change churches, oh, God, oh my God, please. I got a lot of headaches doing that stuff. It was totally amazing. And all that saving of the world, you know what it got me? 2 addictions and a nervous breakdown. That's my reward for saving the world. You know what recovery got me? A wonderful family, great people in recovery, a lot of people to share things with, a whole different world. It opened up doors for me. Isn't that amazing? How the rewards come when you get out of the way. That's why I did the recovery prayer today. When you get out of the way and just let things flow. And everything I know happens in God's time, not in our time. It happens a little bit at a time. My father used to say, bien, a my own. Bien. Little bit. Don't do too much. Take it easy. Relax. Do what you can. Learn something new. Go in a new direction. What are you going to do? Change the world? You ain't going to change it. The sun's going to shine. And even my grandson tried to teach me this stuff. My 7-year-old grandson, on a rainy day when we had something planned, said to me, don't get upset, Papa. The sun's still shining on the other side of the clouds. Infants, children, they see things and know things. We got this problem. You know what our problem is? We grew up. We lost that innocence. We lost that openness. And we try in recovery to bring these things back. And these are roles. That's all they are. Get caught up in it a lot of times. The other one I love too is Mr. and Mrs. Insanity. I just love and crave craziness and insanity. And above all, I crave negativity. I said something to somebody one time and I said, we're going to do our codependency work, but there's a rule. You have to do it with a positive attitude. It's not about finding out what's wrong with you. Oh, I don't want that. I want you to help me find out all the things that are wrong with me. Well, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm sorry. They're just teachable moments that go on inside of you. There's no such thing as stuff is wrong with you. We're just human beings. And we learn by our mistakes. We grow from them. We learn from them. And yet, that insanity, it just goes on. I always tell the story of my neighbor across the street. I was just over to see her yesterday. You know, I love her. 87 years old. Every time I go over there, the sky is falling. The world is coming to an end. Everything's terrible. If the sun's out and it's a beautiful day, it's probably going to rain. And now it's too hot, then it's too cold. When I go over there, she always says to me, "How are you?" I said, "I'm good. I really feel good." "No, you don't." "I don't?" "Okay." I'm getting to a point. I said to my wife, let me make up an illness and I'll make her happy today. I go over and tell her something's aching. Then the smile will come to her face. She finally got it. But you know, it's sad. It's really sad. But people get caught up in these things because they have this vision of the world that everything's terrible. It comes down to a very basic concept. We have to be able to stop looking for things, places, situations, stuff around us, and we have to be able to come out of our roles and come into something new. You know how scary that is, though? Addicts know what I'm talking about. When you're in your addiction, you're used to it. It's comfortable, even though it's uncomfortable. And then you come into recovery. Recovery is scary. It's like rediscovering yourself from the beginning all over again. I see it in families a lot of times. You know, the addict gets into recovery and the family member doesn't know how to handle them in recovery because they got used to handling them in addiction. And addiction was normal to them. Now this poor sucker is getting well. I have to adjust to this person getting well. I told the story before. I used to go to the Al-Anon meeting in South Philadelphia, you know, and we had this lady who would come to the meetings. Oh gosh, it was terrible. She's bitch about her husband, the drunk, the bum, everything, the whole works. And then, you know, that poor guy had the audacity to get sober. Then she comes to the meetings and bitch, he goes to too many damn AA meetings. He can't win. Why? Because she's used to a behavior. That's when I talk about getting stuck in a role. As you move into something new, it's not always going to be comfortable, believe me. You know, finally getting into recovery and finally making changes in my life was very uncomfortable because I wasn't used to it. And that's why you have to have patience. I was talking to a young lady today who comes to meetings, and she gave me a call. And she said, you know, I just came out of treatment, she said, and I just thought how to adjust to this whole thing. What do I do? So I was talking to her for a while. She says, you know, I don't know if I like this recovery stuff. She said, I don't know if I like it or not. It's very, very strange. It's very different. And it's very uncomfortable. And I said, good. You need it right now. Just stay with it. I tried to encourage her. You know, work the program, stay with it, make the phone calls, do what you have to do. Eventually, it will get better. You know, I didn't come into recovery by accident. I came in because I got kicked into it. You know, I always love telling the story. You know, again, I was so busy playing my role. And I was in 2 other 12-step programs. And somebody finally had to identify my eating disorder. The one addiction I did not want to look at, did not want to deal with, did not want to go anywhere near. I don't mind all the others, alcohol and that kind of stuff. Wow. But boy, now all of it, I got to look at something totally different. And really, I got kicked into this role by somebody who confronted me and invited me to go see a doctor. She told me I needed the doctor. Well, I got angry at her. I says, I'll prove her wrong. I went to see the doctor, and then I spent 5 years with that doctor. That doctor turned my life around. It's amazing how the stuff we fight and we battle, we need. It's part of the struggle. The struggle is part of life. And I get a kick out of that. I can't help it. In fact, I don't mind telling the story. The person that kind of kicked me to go see that doctor, I figured, well, she's that healthy. I'm still hanging around, so I married her with that. What are you going to do? It's all part of it. It's all part of the journey. Got to keep it together. But the bottom line is, it's just amazing sometimes when you come down to this process. And I love it. Because again, you don't want to hear this stuff a lot of times. And yet we need to hear it. And that's what's important. So I wanted to bring up roles tonight. As I said, there's a lot more. I can go on till midnight. It's not a problem. But I wanted to give you a sampling of these roles. And like I said, we are going to put them on the website, as soon as we get them there. We will, I know. But then basically you can download them and take a look at the rest of them. Because also when I did this little outline, I also put on here some of the things that you could do to break the pattern of the role too. They're on there. So you can check that out. That's part of it. I wanted to share this because in these first 5 sessions on codependency, and for anybody who's new, you can go back to Vince's Corner on the website and take a look at the other 4 sessions. But the bottom line is, the first 5 sessions were basically to get into the core root of codependency. Now I'm going to spend the next 4 sessions on the recovery process from codependency. It's a beautiful process and it does work. But it's the kind of process that when you're doing it, you don't think it's going to work. But over a period of time, it's almost like a reset. And so I'll start off next week by sharing the 6 stages of recovery from codependency. And then we'll get into the other areas till we finish up with the inner child. But I want to go into the concept of getting back in touch with that little person that's deep down inside of each and every one of us. That beautiful person. You know what's so beautiful about this? And I want to share it with you before I say the prayer tonight. I just am so grateful today for all the people and for the wonderful people that work with me over the years. It's just amazing how God sends people into your life to help you on your journey, to lead you to where you're supposed to be led. And very many times, it's the things that we fight and battle with the most are the things that we really need. Isn't that amazing? And that's okay. And sometimes, we even have to lose some things sometimes to gain other things. It's all part of it. And people always say to me, do you look back and do you regret some of the stuff you went through? I say, no. Everything I went through in my life, everything you went through in your life, they are your experiences. Whatever you went through, you were supposed to go through. The key now is, do I have the strength, do I have the courage to embrace them, to learn from them, to grow from them? Do I have the courage to allow them to become our teacher? Will I fall back in these patterns every once in a while? Of course you will. They're good at breaking out of the jail cell and coming back to visit. Just got to keep putting them back. Why? Because they're part of who we are, part of our history. I can't eliminate my history. It's part of my makeup. So with gratitude and with love, deep down inside, just for the gift of life, for the gift of people, for the gift of experiences, for the gift of things that occurred in our life. That's what's important. And that is the key. So my prayer tonight is that we're able to open our hearts, open our minds, just to be able to allow the spirit and love that's been given to us by a higher power to help us on this journey. Let us pray. God, we come before you tonight. We ask the God of our understanding, our higher power, our divine presence, to be our guide, to be our strength, to allow us to celebrate who we are, to allow us to be open to learn about the beauty and the strength and the wonderful things inside of us. Please teach us the gift of gratitude for our history and for our past. Teach us to be able to embrace it, to learn from it, to grow from it. We pray every day and we ask you to be our guide and be our strength, to lead us on this journey. You constantly send teachers into our life. I know sometimes we don't like the teachers, and yet we need to listen and learn. Because for our growth, and you taught us this so many times in the course of your own journey, it's only through struggle that we come to growth. And so teach us and guide us and be with us as we walk the journey of this earth. And allow us to be able to look at our journey and be grateful, to be open, and to realize we're on this journey, a journey to a beautiful spiritual concept of who we are as a person. Celebrate your personhood. God tells us every day, you are my creation, my gift, and you are my love. We thank you. We thank you, God, and we're grateful. We ask this in your name. Amen.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.